I'm so glad to be back here at the Monty Summit Rise of the Women Entrepreneur afternoon. I don't get to interview and write about enough women at my job at Forbes, so I'm excited to be here all the time. Katlin, you have such a great and interesting entrepreneurial journey to tell about your company, Simple Mills. Why don't you start by telling us your personal dietary revelation that had something to do with founding the company?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I started Simple Mills about 6 or 7 years ago. And at the time, I was working a job that required me to travel every week. And as a result, I was eating a lot of processed food. And that led to me not feeling very great. I really wasn't feeling like myself. And a friend of mine suggested that I might take a look at my diet as really the reason why. And so out of an experiment, I decided to take out all the processed food and instead just eat really simple whole food ingredients, things that I could pronounce, things that had more nutrition. And I was shocked. Everything changed. And then I watched my friends and family clean up their diets and have similar epiphanies, really. And that really surprised me, that food has such a profound impact on our mental and physical wellness. And once I realized that, I was determined to change the way our country's eating, because our food is impacting the people of our country so much. And so I literally went home one day and I brainstormed probably 10 different ways that I could help change what people are eating, everything from going and getting my master's in public health to starting a natural food company. And we know what I did. I started a natural food company. Yeah.
So at what moment did you decide, okay, I can do this? I've been working in consulting. I could be an entrepreneur. I can start a natural food company. Like, was there a light bulb that went off, a day that you remember, a conversation you had with somebody?
You know, what I really remember was thinking, this has to change, and I have to spend all of my power and energy doing this. I was determined. There wasn't anything that was going to stand in my way, and I was almost comfortable losing all of my money just to have that happen. And so it was more out of this belief that things had to change.
Wow. So you came up with the recipes for the first thing was what, muffin mixes? What was the first product you came up with?
Yeah, we started out with muffin mixes. I developed the first recipes in my kitchen, probably went through 90 different recipes, tested them out on friends and family, would knock on each of like the local Whole Foods stores' doors, present to each store one by one. The weekends, I would spend every weekend doing demos all weekend, or I would spend every weekend making the products. So I had a commercial kitchen outside of Atlanta, and the way that I would actually make the product, they were baking mixes, is I would put all of the ingredients into a food-grade barrel and roll it back and forth across the countertop because I couldn't afford a commercial mixer. So you do all these crazy things. And the reason why I say weekends is because I was still traveling 4 or 5 days a week.
Did your employer have any idea that you had this was your side hustle?
They did.
And that was okay?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't give me great scores because of it, but I was okay with it.
So what was it like to get that very first, was it a Whole Foods? What was the first store you had your product in? What was that process like?
It was a Whole Foods store, and I think it's interesting. I think that many, especially women entrepreneurs, have this feeling that they're never quite ready. And I definitely felt like I was not ready. And so I was actually just investigating what the process was. And so I called them and I was like, oh, so what's the process? And he said, just come down and meet with me. Are you free this week? And I was like, I'm free on Saturday. And he's like, okay, come on down.
That sounds pretty easy.
And so I showed him my product and he said, let me get this straight. That mix made these muffins. I was like, yeah. I was like, well, we sell a lot of almond flour. Why don't we add your product to our stores? And I'm like, we're not ready, but okay.
So at that point, you didn't have like packaging for the mix or anything? Or did you have a sample package, or what did you have?
Yeah, I had a package that I developed on 99 Designs and in PowerPoint. Yeah. as cheaply as possible. I'm pretty sure it cost me like $30.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So it took you how long did it take before you were able to go back in the store with a product?
The process takes about 3 months for them to like add you to their system. So it took about 3 months, and then we were kind of off and running.
And you were at the store every weekend doing your samples to get people to try it and buy it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then somewhere along the way you decided, I'm going to go to business school.
When we were in about 5 stores, I started at Chicago booth to get my MBA. And it's kind of funny because there were like these 2 parallel tracks. And in many ways, it was like, okay, as a consultant, what you're supposed to do is go to business school. And so I was kind of checking that box. But really, the business started to take off. And so
while you were in business school?
While I was in business school. And so I got about a third of the way through the program and just realized I couldn't take classes anymore and started hiring a team and getting into more stores and raising money. And
were there any particular classes at business school that you found super helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely negotiations. I was also probably the world's most engaged accounting student, mainly because I was doing our QuickBooks at the time. And so I was like, so let's just say theoretically there's a transaction like this.
So you're basically, the theoretical example was what you were actually doing with your company. That's nice. You get advice from a professional.
Absolutely. Well, not for free, but
for a lot of money.
Yeah. Oh, but I think probably the most useful one was I ended up taking the new Venture Challenge course, which I took because it was kind of, I could work on my business in the class.
It was called New Venture Challenge.
Exactly. And the purpose of it is to help you raise money. And I thought at the time, in a very naive manner, that we didn't need to raise money. Ironically, we did really need to raise money, and that was actually the perfect time for us as a business. So they taught us how to really pitch investors, and we raised our first round at the end of that, and actually placed #1 in the competition.
And did you get introduced to the investors through the business school connection, through Booth's program?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was a really critical and important thing about that class is they really helped us build a network of investors, which I think is one of the things that us as women entrepreneurs can help other women with, is introductions to investors. Because before that, I really didn't have a network of people who could invest. And it takes a lot of investors and a lot of momentum, especially people who are interested in your round, to make a round happen. And so I really encourage other people to help with that.
And so what do you think it was that helped you get those investors? I mean, do you remember like a bunch saying no before you got one that said yes? And what was there some magic that went on in the room when they said yes?
Yeah, it's, wow, I talked to a lot of investors. Probably in my first round, talked to 9 investors every day for months on end.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a long process. And at some point, your luck really catches up with you. And that
Is it luck or is it persistence?
It's both. I had one of the women that I had talked to end up in the grocery store next to one of the men that I had talked to. Neither of them knew each other. And the man asked the woman, as he was looking at our products, "What do you think of this brand?" And she said, "I'm thinking of investing in them." And he called me up and he was like, "I want exclusive rights to take a look at this deal." And he was our lead investor, or is our lead investor.
But that's so interesting because it shows that you kind of need, some people want to know that someone else thinks this is a good idea. Like they need a gut check, right?
Absolutely.
From someone else before they would invest.
Yeah.
Fascinating. What if that didn't happen?
I know. Well, I'm sure we would have gotten it eventually, but
yeah. Wow. So tell me, how much money have you raised so far, and how many rounds?
Yeah. So we have raised about $8 million to date.
So you did like a seed round while you were in business school?
Yeah, we did a seed round and a Series A, and I mean it's just it's kind of funny this whole process. The other thing that we've used throughout the business is debt. So more recently, we've started working, there are some great debt options out there that will help fund your inventory and receivables. And one of the things that I really underestimated in building the business in the early days, and part of the reason why I didn't think we needed to raise money, is working capital. I mean, if you have 4 months of inventory essentially wrapped up in working capital at any given time, you have a huge capital need. And so debt's been a great option.
And the idea to use debt and to raise debt instead of equity, that came from your investors, or this is like, how'd you even think of that as an option?
Yeah, so we'd been investigating banks and kept getting no, you're risky, as most startups are, and some of our investors introduced us to a newer structure. If you think about it, like equity is super expensive, and then conventional debt's not that pretty inexpensive. And so there's, at least in consumer products, some newer options out there where there might be a higher interest rate, but it's still much cheaper than equity.
So you are now, like, where are your describe your product line and where it is.
Yeah, so we've got 30 different products. Really what we make are baking mixes, crackers, cookies, and we make them all out of simple whole food ingredients. So that they're not just free from the things that I don't want in my body, so like allergens, like unnatural ingredients, gums, natural flavors, artificial flavors, but also for more, and that they have much more nutrient density. So we use things like almonds or sunflower seeds or flax seeds to make things like a cheddar cracker that tastes really delicious. The idea in my mind is if you kind of make these everyday favorites out of things that we want to be eating more of, then it will change what people are eating.
And how like, what's the reception like in terms of the stores where you are? Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So we're in about 16,000 stores today. We're the largest natural baking mix brand, second largest natural cracker brand, and third largest natural cookie brand.
Wow. That's great. And your company's about 5-6 years old? How old is it? Something
Yes.
like that?
Yeah.
And so you're based in Chicago.
Yes.
And you pretty much outsource the manufacturing. Talk about the structure of things. Who's on your team?
Yeah, so we have 46 people on our team, and we contract manufacture our products. We work with a number of contract manufacturers who make each of our products, but partner really tightly with them. I think one of the things that's most complex about building a consumer products company is the operations, because when your company is scaling 2 to 3 times every year, your operations have to scale with it, and that oftentimes means that your contract manufacturers have to scale with it. And so our team, we've invested pretty heavily on our manufacturing and operations team to support that side of our business.
And one of the comments in the earlier panel was about CEO's role changing as the business changes. I mean, so you've gone from running, doing everything yourself at the very beginning, to now 43 people. Talk about what you've learned along the way, maybe mistakes you've learned from, and maybe how your role has changed.
Yeah, it's completely true. My role has really changed. I think in the early days, my success, the business success and failure, was driven by my ability to get as much done as possible in the shortest amount of time. So just straight hustle and grind. And then I think the more people you have on your team, the more you build your team, the more my role has focused so much more on the people and making sure that we have the right people on the team, really thinking quite a bit about our culture and how I can best enable our culture, how we can motivate our team. And these were things that I kind of underestimated when I started the business. I kind of felt like, oh yeah, you just tell someone to do something and they do it. That seems relatively simple, right? But I had an advisor pretty early on in the business who told me that being an entrepreneur can be one of the most downwardly mobile professions. And I had to think about that because what that really means is that if your company's growing really fast, it can outgrow you. And so in order to make sure that you're not the rate limiting factor in your company's growth, you have to make sure that you're scaling super fast.
And when you say it can outgrow you, you mean you as a leader and your leadership abilities? Is that what you're...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think I think it was also referenced on the prior panel that's like every 6 months, your job is different, and so you have to scale to meet different demands. And so one of the things that I've really prioritized is putting in place things that help me learn a lot faster. So whether it's taking classes, our full leadership team and myself work with an executive coach. We also actually provide coaching to the full organization.
And what do people need coaching on?
Yeah, I think it's most often everything that's related to EQ.
So kind of also echoing what, I think it was Liz, I'm not sure who in the hardest part is the people.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
It absolutely is. I mean, I think that the coaching that we focused on our team has really related to things like helping people thrive in ambiguity or helping people figure out how to motivate other people instead of micromanaging other people, how to address conflict. And not that people address conflict it's more that people avoid conflict, right? People don't
Because it's easier to avoid it, right?
It's easier to avoid it. And so it's like, how do you get people comfortable with providing feedback and having hard conversations? Because when you have a company that does those things well, you can move so much faster.
Wow, and then what you mentioned taking classes. What kind of classes will help you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah,
I think CEO. Yeah.
I think it is really the people classes. When I was back in business school, they weren't the classes that I prioritized, but thinking through even dynamics in an organization, how people perceive feedback, how different people gain reputations in organizations and how that impacts their performance. Really understanding all of those dynamics can help you manage through things. Like an example would be like you've got somebody on your team who isn't performing or allegedly isn't performing, and there's this thing called set up to fail. And it's when somebody is rumored to not be performing, and so then people believe they're not performing, and then they believe they're not performing, and then they get micromanaged, and so they perform even worse. And so it helps you pick up on some of those dynamics and make sure that you're solving the right problems in your organization.
And then, of course, there's the whole other challenge of operating in this food industry. I mean, the food industry's got to be incredibly competitive. After we talked, I went to I live in San Francisco, I went to my local Safeway, because you had mentioned that your products were in Safeway. And I was looking I didn't see any crackers. I couldn't find any crackers, but I found the Simple Mills muffin mixes. Mm-hmm. And the thing that surprised me was the price. Mm-hmm. It was $7.99 for a box of muffin mix, whereas the Betty Crocker one was $3.99. So I figure oh gosh, that's got to be another challenge, right? Finding your market, and I don't know, do you want to bring your prices down? Or can you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for us as a brand, I think it's really important that we are providing nutrient-dense real food. And what we're finding is that more and more consumers like me are realizing that the food that they eat has an impact on their bodies. And because of that, people are willing to pay more for real food. Because I think we as a country, our food is so falsely cheap because so much of it isn't actually food. And we spend...
When you say it isn't actually food, what do you really mean?
I mean, a lot of it's like literally chemicals that we're creating in labs. And that's what really makes a product cheap. Like you take, for example, a vanilla flavor instead of vanilla extract. Mm-hmm. That makes something a lot cheaper. And so what we're finding is that consumers really are willing to pay up for this. And so we have to do that in order to run our business effectively. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So are you, I mean, a lot of startups are not profitable, right? Because you're growing. Can you talk a little bit about the operation, like in terms of the growth, the revenues, profitability?
Yeah, I unfortunately can't share revenues and profitability, but I can say that the business has grown 2 to 3x year over year. I mean, it's been just absolutely crazy growth. I mean, the natural food industry as a whole, it's a $230 billion industry now.
Wow. So what do you think, what's your goals for the future? Like what would you like Simple Mills to turn into?
Yeah, I think it really goes back to that original mission. I am squarely committed to changing what this country is eating. And I think one of the most powerful things that we can do as a brand is make different decisions with our food. Because I think that when we put, for example, we put a lot less sugar in our products than the other products on the market, or when we use more nutrient-dense ingredients, or when we have 8 ingredients instead of 15 in a box, then it changes what other people in the space are doing. And so I love hearing about our products being included in innovation sessions at large consumer products companies. I love seeing, and yes, I've seen this, competitors copy our ingredient label. Because
You've seen that already?
Yes.
Oh, do tell. So what's different about your I mean, actually the style of the label or the ingredients or what?
The ingredients themselves and also the style of the ingredient deck as well. So we've seen both. But I think that's honestly awesome because it means that what we're doing, the changes that we're putting in place are becoming table stakes. And I think that's really one of the places that business can really be used for good, and we can continue to make better and better decisions about our food. One of the analogies I love to use is like CRT monitors. Like, okay, most businesses these days don't have CRT monitors, and nobody's really interested in buying one. But at some point, they were like the best thing, right? And then people made different decisions. They developed LCD monitors that were kind of big and clunky. And then one day there's the very thin LCD monitors and LEDs. And so it's our job to push the limits of what we're doing with our food to change what this country's eating.
And the fact that you've already seen it, and so you're talking about large national brands already.
Yes, I can count. I can't count on my 2 hands the number of times that I've heard about our products being included in innovation sessions, which I love.
Wow. So people are like, you're talking to others in the industry that are telling you this.
Yes.
So do you expect that? Are you trying to expand your product line? Do you expect that we'll see more products? Can you talk about that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that really the entire center of the grocery store is really, I think, ripe for innovation. There's so much carbs and sugar and ingredients you can't pronounce, and we really see those areas as places where we can clean up those ingredient decks and make those products out of things that are not only delicious but also work so much harder for people's bodies.
Mm-hmm. So Nilo asked a question in the last panel that I thought I wanted to ask you too, is what advice do you wish you'd gotten early on that might have helped you?
Yeah, I think that it really is about the people, and also, you know what else? That it is, not to quote a little Miley Cyrus here, but
Miley Cyrus. Okay.
It really is all about the climb. I think that when I was starting the business, it was always about the destination, and the more that I'm in the business, the more that I love the thick of it. The things that are difficult, the things that are hard. I mean, that really is what is exciting and interesting and motivating about the business. The easy days aren't the fun days. The fun days are the days when you have to like really work your butt off and figure out something that you don't know how you're going to do it.
Right, being comfortable with the uncomfortable. I love that expression from the previous panel, yeah. And any advice that you would have to any entrepreneurs in the room who want to follow their own dreams?
Yeah, I think continue to invest in your growth. I think that it will be the thing that limits you if you don't.
And with that, we are out of time. Thank you, Katlin. Good luck with the future.
Thank you.